6 o'clock, I'll bring the Tuolumne County Planning Commission meeting to order for March 18th, 2015. Would you please rise and join me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'd like to welcome two new members, Bob Volker, Peter Rye, newly appointed to the Planning Commission. We have two others. Of course, John Latore was reappointed for, I don't know, fourth or fifth term or something. And then we had Rob, I don't know how you say that last name, but
Cole Prisbilla.
Cole Pritzkela. I'm sure I'll stumble over that in the next few months. In any case, they had some serious prior commitments, so they were unable to attend, but they will join the Planning Commission at our next meeting. Okay, we're going to dispose of some commission business before we get to the agenda, so have a little patience. First, any report from any of the commissioners? Any report from staff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I would also like to welcome our two new commissioners, Commissioner Fulcher and Commissioner Rye. And we do look forward to Commissioner Presbala enjoying us soon. I did want to mention that, as you are aware, one member of this commission sits on the Board of Supervisors Agriculture Advisory Committee, and I had sent out a memorandum about a month ago advising that there was a current opening. Our new Commissioner Fulcher has been appointed by the Board of Supervisors to fill that position. Even though that's a representative from your commission, remember, that's appointed specifically by the board rather than the other offices you'll discuss today. So there is a difference in the procedure in that regard. You'll also notice that since we do have a Ag Committee rep now on the commission, that I have added that under your list of reports so that, again, we can keep up to date with what's happening with that particular committee. We haven't met in a while. We haven't had a lot of projects ready for your consideration. But I did want to advise you that we do have items for your meeting on April 1st. And then we would like to schedule a workshop on the general plan update for your commission on April 15th, tax day. So at least if you could mark your calendars, then we will have a couple of meetings in April.
Okay. Thank you. And no reports from the commissioners, all right. Can we have a report from the Board of Supervisors Planning Committee representative, if we have a representative? You're
I
it.
think that's still me.
Okay.
We have not had a meeting.
Okay, that's short. And then a report from the Ag Advisory Committee representative.
I was just appointed to that, and I guess this week is double up on me since we haven't had a meeting for a while, because tomorrow night we'll be having the first meeting that I'll actually be attending of the Ag Commission.
Okay, thank you. All right, the next item under our business is the election of officers. Do we have, and we have to elect a chairman, a vice chairman, a planning committee representative, and an alternate representative. So, starting with the chairman, have a nomination. Well, you got to have a chairman.
Mr. Chairman, has it
Mr. Rye.
rotated? Has it rotated in the past? Has that kind of been the norm, or what's been the norm for the committee?
I'd have to ask staff. I've only been on a year and a half. 2 years.
For many years, when we had many commissioners who had been serving for quite some time, it did seem to rotate, that there'd be a chair and then the vice chair would ascend to the chairmanship. But we've had a turnover quite a bit in the last few years, so we haven't followed any particular order at this point. And we currently don't have a vice chair, so because Ron Ringen, of course, resigned, and he was our vice chair.
I thought we elected
Oh,
Mr.
that's right, we did
Baker,
our
last
December meeting.
Yeah, we do have
We
a
just haven't
vice.
met since then.
Yeah.
So, yes, so Commissioner Baker's been filling in that position.
There is no requirement, there's no term limit of chairman.
No, there is no term limit
So if we wanted to stick with it, we could.
for life, yes.
Before I might abdicate like King George or something.
Mr. Chairman,
No, in all seriousness, we do need a nomination to consider here.
I would like to offer a nomination. I nominate Dick Plan to serve another term as chair.
Is there a second to that?
I'll second that.
All right, we do have a motion. Any other nominations for chair? I don't see any. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, so ordered. Okay, vice chairman, nomination for vice chairman.
I would nominate Commissioner Baker, since it sounds like he already,
Is there a second to that?
Was.
Second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any other nominations for vice chair? Seeing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, so ordered. Board of Supervisors, Planning Committee representatives, 2 of them.
Yes, and Mr. Chair, if I could just mention, that committee has traditionally met on the third Thursday of the month at 1:30. Supervisor John Gray is chair of that committee again, and at this time, he plans to keep with that schedule. That sometimes affects who is available to serve at an afternoon meeting, but it's traditionally the third Thursday of the month at 1:30.
Okay. Do we have any volunteers on that?
I'll volunteer.
Okay,
We need 2 plus an alternate, is that?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
okay.
Mr. Chairman, I will also volunteer.
All right, Commissioner Fraser and Commissioner Baker, and I will move that they be appointed. Have a second?
second.
Motion is second. Any other nominations? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, so ordered. And our last item is an alternate to the Planning Committee. One alternate.
Mr. Chair, I'm philosophically willing to do it, but work schedule-wise, it may be difficult for me on occasion, so my schedule's rather unpredictable. So, if you'd like me to do it, I certainly wouldn't mind being an alternate, but I may or may not be able to be there at any given meeting.
Mr. Chairman, if it is a problem for Peter, I would volunteer for that.
All right, we'll nominate Commissioner Folker. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is second. Anybody else? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, abstained, so ordered. That takes care of that business. Our final item of business is the minutes of the meeting of December 17th. Any corrections or additions to the mailed copy? If not, may I have a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Motion,
I'll second.
is second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Mr. Chairman,
I would abstain.
since I wasn't.
You're right. Two abstentions. 1, 2, 3. We got 3 votes. Is that enough?
No, and I'll just, so the new commissioners are aware, and also the public, the commission's rules are that a quorum of this committee is 4 members, regardless if there are any vacancies, and any action has to be passed by a majority of the membership, which is the same as the quorum. So you have to have 4 members to pass a motion. So we can continue this to the next meeting. I will advise you, though, that even though you weren't on the commission, you are not obligated to abstain. And your rules, too, an abstention does not count either for or against. And some rules, it goes one way or the other, but not in this case.
Okay, let's,
Mr. Chairman, since we can move on with this, then I'll take that option too. And
Likewise.
all right. Again, we need a new motion. I'll move adoption of the minutes. We have a second?
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, so ordered. Takes care of the business. Now, the next section has to do with public comment. This public comment period is not for anything that's on the agenda, because I know there's a host of people here who wish to speak on one of our agenda items. This is just general public comment on something that's not on the agenda. Anybody who wishes to provide that public comment to the commission, welcome to come forward. Seeing none, we will close the public comment period. And now we will go to our agenda. First item has to do with the Hoyt project regarding a zone change. Staff report?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Robert and Mary Hoyt own a 6/10 of an acre parcel that is currently zoned R1MX and open space. The open space zoning on their site was approved by the Board of Supervisors as mitigation for potential impacts to a drainage that crosses the site associated with tentative subdivision map 90T-80, which was approved by the Board of Supervisors in 1991. That map created the Sunny Hill subdivision that is comprised of 11 lots in the Kalamazoo Basin. The Hoyt's property is Lot 2 of the Sunny Hill subdivision and is located at 12960 Sunny Hill Court. The assessor's parcel number is 44550-02. In September of 2014, the Hoyts applied for a building permit to construct a swimming pool behind their house. When they submitted the application, staff noticed that the pool is very close to the open space on the property, but it wasn't proposed within the open space, and a building permit was issued in October of 2014. Construction was begun on the pool, and then the Hoyts decided that they would like to have additional patio area around the pool. The patio would extend into the open space, which our open space zoning is a preservation zone, not allowing that type of construction. As such, the Hoyts decided that they would switch the zoning on their property. So they submitted an application to rezone 477 square feet from open space to single-family residential, and in exchange, rezone 479 square feet to open space. Subsequent to submitting their application, they had their property surveyed, and the survey found that the northwestern corner of the residence is actually within the open space. And so the proposed rezoning would correct that situation so that the house would no longer be in open space. It would also allow them to build a patio around the pool. The area that's currently zoned open space that's proposed to go to R1 currently is covered with annual grasses, so it doesn't have significant vegetation or wildlife habitat on it. The area that they have selected for the new open space does, however, have buckbrush, live oak, and blackberries, which is a riparian type of plant. So the proposed open space area is actually more appropriate for preservation than the current. So staff has recommended approval of this project. On a rezoning, again for the benefit of the new commissioners, the commission is a recommending body. So if your action tonight would be a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors to either approve this zone change or to deny the zone change.
Any commissioners' questions of staff before we proceed? Okay, seeing none, in keeping with the protocol of the commission, the proponent of the project, if in attendance, is welcome to come forward for 5 minutes and give us any further information. Okay, don't see anybody. So now we'll go to the formal public hearing. And the way we do this is the proponents are able to speak first, 3 minutes each. The opponents then are able to speak in opposition, also 3 minutes. And then there's opportunity for somebody to speak neutral. And there's also an opportunity for rebuttal and surrebuttal under certain conditions. So having said that, this public hearing is open, and I invite anybody who's in favor of the Hoyt project to come forward.
Hi, Bob Hoyt, owner. Hey, just some additional information while we're going through all this process. We discovered that the house was built on the lot, and it was, it was off by like 30 feet, 20 to 30 feet. It was pushed back, and that's why it ended up encroaching onto the open space, and we didn't discover that until we were going through the process of trying to swap out. So it wasn't something, we bought the house as a spec home, So it wasn't something that we, were, just in case anybody was thinking that, we're trying to get away with something, it was just something we stumbled across and obviously was signed off on. And anyway, dollars and cents later, we're just trying to, make my backyard a little nicer.
Sure. Any questions of Mr. Hoyt? Seeing none, thanks, sir. Anybody else wish to speak in favor of the Hoyt project? I don't see anybody. Anybody wish to speak in opposition to the project? I don't see anybody. Anybody wish to speak neutrally? Don't see anybody. And with that, we close the public hearing on the Hoyt project, bring the matter back to the commission for action. The potential motion and findings are on page 3 of the agenda report.
I'll make a motion.
Mr. Baker, okay?
I make a motion that we approve the proposed zone change based on following findings A through D.
Is there a second for that?
Second.
Most second. Discussion? If not, I'll call a question. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, carries unanimously. Okay. All right, item number 2 on the agenda is the granite, where's my thing here? Granite Land Holdings, that's what I'm trying to get out, having to do with a propane tank and facilities, as well as a composting facility on the site. And well, can we have the staff report on that, and then we'll proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Granite Land Holdings LLC and Justin Dambacher own a 13.7-acre parcel that is currently zoned M1 Light Industrial and Open Space 1. The property is located in the southeast of the intersection of Eagle Ridge Drive and Eagle Ridge Drive West in East Sonora off of Tuolumne Road. The property owners are asking for your support this evening for a site review permit that would allow them to develop a propane distribution facility on a portion of the property. That facility would be within a 15,000 square foot fenced equipment storage yard and would feature a 30,000-gallon propane tank. The project would be for distribution only. It would not have any type of retail sales on the site, so individual property owners couldn't go there to get propane. This would be for large trucks that would come in, fill this tank, up the tank on a periodic basis, and then distribution trucks would come, fill up their trucks, and then go about the county distributing propane. So just so you understand that that's intended to be that type of operation and not individual cars coming and going or trucks to get their propane. Additionally, the site review permit would provide for the future construction of 2 buildings on the site, one up to 4,800 square feet, the other up to 5,000 square feet. At this time, the property owners have no identified use of those buildings, so we have treated them in reviewing this project as just general industrial use at some point in the future. The owners are also asking for you to approve a conditional use permit for a green waste composting facility, which would include outdoor composting windrows and associated equipment, including a mechanical grinder. The use permit would allow them to process up to 15,000 cubic yards of compost material annually. And to put this in perspective, that's less than half of the compost that is processed at the Cal Sierra Earth Resource Facility off of Camage. There have been a lot of concern about noise from the grinder. You'll notice in your staff report, there is a map that shows the location of the grinder in the northwest corner of the site. That is intentional in order to provide the greatest distance between neighboring property owners, specifically residential properties, and the grinder, with recognizing that those types of equipment do generate significant noise at different times. I will point out, too, that the county general plan requires new development to adhere to noise standards at property lines, and those standards would certainly apply to this project. Processing this application resulted in 80 responses to our initial request for comments. Those letters are included in your agenda package. Of those 80 responses, 3 expressed support for the project. 1 was neutral concerning the project. The remaining responses were all in opposition. Those letters identified concerns about noise from the proposed project, dust, pathogens that would be generated by the composting material, water pollution, again, compost material and leachate from it entering into Curtis Creek, rats and other rodents that might take up residence in the composting windrows. Also concerns about fire hazard from the propane tank, concerns about where water would come for processing the compost because we do have a drought, concerns about removal of oak trees from the site to accommodate this project, and also a general feeling that this project is not compatible with the surrounding neighborhood. You notice that the agenda report is substantial. We believe that we have addressed all of the concerns raised by the neighboring property owners and others who commented on the project. I just want to highlight to your commission and the people in the audience that composting facilities are regulated by the state of California. There are very specific regulations that have to be met in order to operate one of these types of facilities. In addition to the conditional use permit, which is only a land use permit, an authorization to proceed with the project from a land use perspective, the actual operation of the composting facility requires an operations permit from both our Environmental Health Division, serving as the local enforcement agency under the California Code of Regulations, and also our local air pollution control district. So those agencies would have a responsibility for ensuring that the composting facility complies with all of the state regulations once it is in operation. We did distribute a letter to you this evening, or a memorandum to you this evening, concerning 2 conditions included in the site review permit, and those both relate to setbacks for the propane tank from property lines. And conditions 19 and 57 currently require a minimum setback of 50 feet. The property owners have been talking with the Tuolumne County Fire Prevention Division of the Tuolumne County Fire Department, and the fire department has advised that they could entertain some reduction in those setbacks, but of course would have to be approved by the fire department. So we are requesting that if your commission does decide to approve the site review permit this evening, that you would modify conditions 19 and 57 to simply add that the setback must be 50 feet unless a reduced setback is approved by the Tuolumne County Fire Department. There is one other entitlement that is being requested, and that is an indemnification agreement between the county and the property owners, and that is an indemnification agreement requires the property owners to hold the county harmless in event of any lawsuits concerning this project, so that there would be no cost to the county and the taxpayers if there is a lawsuit in the future. With that, Mr. Chairman, Deputy CRA Directors Duke York and Mike Laird are here with me this evening, and we'll be happy to answer your questions about this project.
That's zoned industrial right now, right?
Yes, it
There's
is.
no zone change
No zone change.
involved, okay. Commissioners, any questions of staff before we proceed?
Um,
Yeah, Commissioner Fraser.
Yes, thank you. Just general notice, I did drive out that way and have a look at the property. It appears to me as though there is a propane storage area as a part of that property. Am I correct? Propane tank storage.
You mean small tanks? Or?
Household type.
Well, yes, part of this project is for this propane distribution facility, and they would have the small tanks in order to provide service to a new customer. They would take a tank out,
I understand.
and then they would service that tank. Yeah.
The storage unit with the household tanks is present there at this time now. Is that correct?
Not that I'm aware of.
No, the facility is not there. I have been told that there are tanks stored somewhere in the vicinity. I don't know if they're on this parcel or another parcel. Perhaps
Thank you.
one of the project proponents could answer that for you when they speak.
Thank you, Mike.
I did have one
Questions?
question.
Yes, Commissioner Ray.
Yeah, Ms. Shane, I mean, the propane distribution is not something that requires a conditional use, though. Is that an allowed use on?
You're
that?
correct. That is what we call a permitted use, and so the purpose of the site review permit isn't to authorize them to use that. It is to review the location and layout to make sure that it is compatible with the neighborhood and meets other criteria in that regard. So that is about the layout on the site rather than the actual
About the
use.
details, but they're allowed to
That's
have
right. They
that
are
as long as
allowed
they
to
do it in accordance with the rules.
That's right.
Okay.
Question? If not, we'll get started in the public hearing. And the first item is the proponents, Granite Land Holdings, are allowed 5 minutes right up front to describe the project or whatever they'd like to say, and they are welcome to come forward.
Mr. Chairman, while they are doing that, just as a reminder, on this project, the Tuolumne County Planning Commission is the decision-making body. So you are making the decision tonight. Any decision by the Planning Commission is subject to appeal to the Tuolumne County Board of Supervisors. Any appeal must be filed within 10 days of the commission's decision.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yes, sir.
Hi, so my name's Justin Dambacker. Me and my partner Mike Holland are the ones trying to do this. I just want to start by thanking everybody in this process. It's been a very interesting battle. I wasn't really prepared for this type of thing, but I just want to thank everybody for their time, and I'm glad that there is a process, so at least everybody can voice their opinions. And really, I feel kind of bad that some people are against me. I hate to have opposition. I wish we lived in a world where everybody could just, happily roam along. That's not the case, unfortunately. And so I want to say I'm sorry to all the people that don't want this to happen. I really think it's a great idea. The foundation of any environment, any ecosystem, is the soil. And so what we're doing is we're taking a waste product and we're turning it into the foundation of our entire existence. The compost that we're going to make and hopefully keep local at a reduced price is going to be organic compost for people to grow food in. I personally am going to take this stuff and grow food in it and feed it to my kids. I don't want there to be any confusion because I own a garbage company. I don't want there to be any confusion that there's any kind of garbage. There's not going to be any dead animals. We're not doing anything crazy. I'm going to take this compost and feed it to my kids through organic farming. So I want to frame that up. The other thing I want to point out is I'm an Eagle Scout. My partner's an Eagle Scout. My family's been here I'm 7th generation, been here since before the gold rush. We're not trying to do anything stupid. And again, I feel bad that we're ticking a few people off, but I think that what we're trying to do is, in the big picture, very good. We have a huge amount of biomass that's leaving this county through deforestation and topsoil erosion. Topsoil erosion is a massive problem on a global scale, and the only way to address it is locally. So what we're trying to do is stop the exit of biomass from this county. Right now, a lot of this biomass is leaving. We need to keep the biomass here, and we need to grow food in it. That's the right thing to do, and that's how to build a strong community and a strong county full of self-reliant people. So that's the stretch goal for this. And then if you back that all up to what can we do right now, that's what me and my partner are just trying to do. We're trying to stop the green waste from leaving the county, collect it at a cheaper rate to save the county some money, compost it locally without a bunch of trucking, and sell it locally at a discounted price so that people can grow their vegetables in it. It's the property zoned for it. The conditions are many. We've got 75 conditions on one and 85 on the other. And I'd like to thank the huge amount of time that these folks took. Bev, Duke, Mike, and Renee all took a huge amount of time to try to finesse the conditions well balanced to where it would suit both sides as best possible. So again, thank you for that. But most of all, I just honestly, I just feel like I'm disappointed that anybody would be against it. It's a good idea, and I do it in my own backyard. Right now, a couple hundred feet away from my home is 350 yards of compost. I compost it, I turn it, and I grow food in it, and I feed it to my kids. And if we all did that, we'd all be better off.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Dambecker, Mr. Volker?
Chairman, I read somewhere, I think, in here too, that some of this compost not only is for sale, but will be donated.
Oh, yeah. So my family is active in the focus group. The high school is right there. If we got in a situation where we had too much, the high school is, literally right around the corner. So the high school would benefit immensely from the extra. So one of the issues that we have in this facility is what if we have too much? Well, if we have too much, I can truck it a half a mile down the street and donate it to the high school and teach the next generation how to be self-reliant. So I don't think we're in a position where we're going to choke on our own supply, which is always a concern in an operation like this.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Dambecker.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we'll go to the formal public hearing now. Proponents are first, opponents are second, and then anybody speaks neutral, and then under certain circumstances, there will be rebuttal and surrebuttal. If anybody wish to speak in favor of this project is welcome to come forward. Yeah, 3 minutes for everybody is the standard. Yes, sir.
Hello, I'm Mike Holland. I'm Justin's partner, the other member of the property owner. Like Justin said, I'm very supportive of it. We're trying to do something that's better for our kids. Something's better to the community as a whole. Something to point out, like Justin said, he does have a pile of this. He grows in his own yard. He's literally 60 feet from the Tamrock Mobile Home Park, and the county has never received a complaint to this day about any of this stuff. And so, in fact, they come over and get vegetables. They get eggs from him actively going on right now. And I know Cascade and Tamrock's owned by the same owner, so hopefully they've communicated and they understand what's going on. So we're not trying to be a nuisance to any of our neighbors. We did receive a lot of complaints. We've reached out to the mobile home park community. We've attended their meetings, and I think we've answered a lot of their questions and put a lot of the concerns to bed. Otherwise, your room would be packed full right now. Otherwise, so hopefully you guys support the project and give it a yes vote.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, sir. Anybody else speak in favor of the project? Don't see anybody. We'll close that and we go to the opponents. Anybody that opposes the project, welcome to come forward. 3-minute limit. Yes, sir.
Good evening. Can you hear me? Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Ian Declan Owens, and I yesterday was elected to be the president of the Cascade Mobile Home Park. We have approximately 180 people, and to the man are almost opposed to it. I would just like to deviate for a second and point to the lady's comment, Lady Commissioner. And I'm concerned about the fact that Mr. Dambecker has already moved in a considerable amount of the propane tanks, even though he has not yet been fully approved. I am concerned about that. That's a fact, you're correct. He needs to explain that. Second, I don't want us to miss the point here. I and all the other people in my park are not opposed to the philosophical, shall we say, use of a very clean product. That's nothing, we're not opposed to that. That's really not, and Mr. Dambarker and Mr. Holland needs to understand this. It's not about your product. It's not about your business. It's about the impact that it will have on your neighbors if you are allowed to run it. And I tell you what that's going to be. Trucks that deliver propane are not like other trucks. They are fitted within a hydraulic inertial system because of the liquid inside of the tanks that weigh approximately propane 10 pounds per gallon. If you've ever heard a propane tank stop, it's extremely noisy because the inertial system picks up and supports the tank, lateral and sideways movement. We have got a situation that the propane facility that is being suggested is not a static, it's a dynamic business. There's going to be trucks coming and going. We already, on top of that, have a horrible situation with the traffic coming down Tuolumne Road. It's a nightmare. That is definitely going to be a problem.
You got about 30 seconds to wrap up, sir.
Okay, and very simply, if I can use a bit of humor, we have two businesses that are both chemically combustible. It reminds me of the old adage that fairness and the law are mutually incompatible. And I believe that when you have two businesses that are both explosive and dynamic next to each other, you better make absolutely sure that you're not going to have a problem down the road. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak in opposition? In fact, let's say, raise your hand if you wish to speak in opposition tonight. Okay, probably a few more. I tell you, to make this as efficient as possible, could you line up along the wall over there? That way we would save a lot of time, and so whoever is first is first. Yes, sir.
Good evening. Thank you very much. My name is James Nippenberg, and my concerns are my house, according to the schematics they have, are going to be 600 feet away from the compost pile, 1,000 feet away from the propane tanks. I have pets. I live 30 yards from Curtis Creek. With that leaching down into the creek, I don't understand how they're going to control all this. I mean, we have a lot of problems as far as, traffic and everything else right there. We just had the school move in and start their whole building situation over there. They're putting a barn in. They've already did all kinds of stuff across the street. Now they're doing the same thing. When it's windy, I get the smell from one place, from the south, from the north. I get the smell from the other place. Water, the leaching from the ponds, I guess they're going to have ponds, are right behind me. I mean, what insurance do I have that I don't have to worry about pathogens coming into me and my family, my well? Am I going to have to dig my well deeper in order to avoid getting sick? I mean, we have a water problem as it is. And so I don't know how they're going to, take care of all that stuff. My wife's concerned. She's sick. She's on disability. Stuff coming up behind us. I worked at the mill for several years. I know how things catch on fire. Now, you're saying 15,000 cubic feet of materials are going to be there annually, right? Annually. Okay, so those are going to be in big windrows. When we get the heat out here, we have no water. We have all seen that mill catch on fire several times due to spontaneous combustion. How are we going to prevent any of that? I mean, I'm right there. I mean, if you look on the map, I am the closest house to any windrow. And so I'm really uncomfortable. I really am. My wife's uncomfortable. I have pets. I don't know what to do. I feel like I'm up against the wall here, and I'm not sure how to go about changing this.
From the
I'm concerned about
proposed,
the traffic.
from the proposed site of the grinder and the windrows, which direction is your house?
I am south. I'm right there at the bottom of the, if you look at that little map, that last windrow, right here, here's my house.
He's south of Curtis Creek. So
Okay.
if you look at the map on page 67, the
Yeah.
aerial photo.
Right on the other
He
side
would
of
be
the creek.
directly south.
South of Curtis Creek?
Yes.
Okay, I got the
But
picture.
the leaching
Yes.
from those windrows, okay, go down into that creek. Now, as it is, we have that creek running through the mill, and running through all their water supplies, coming all the way down. And so it's cleaning itself as it's going through. But the pathogens and everything else, are there chemicals being used on these windrows? What is breaking these materials down besides chopping it up? And how long is it going to stay there? You know, are we going to get a stench from that? I mean, am I going to have to smell this 24 hours a day and then smell the pigs across the street from the school and their agricultural thing? Now, I'm all for them taking care of business, but I'm also all for me living a quality life, and I shouldn't have to worry about that.
Understand. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Good evening. My name is Marilyn Scheller, and I live on neighboring property to the project. My main concern is the noise from the grinder. Inside my home, with windows closed, I listen to the mill grinding all the time. Now, I don't know if they're grinding different material or similar material, but it sounds like it's, you know, 100 feet from my home. And it's very annoying and disruptive of the peaceful living that we have out there. And this goes on all night and during the day, and it's loud. It's not just, oh yeah, I thought I heard it. No, it's grinding. So I'm very concerned about that noise, because this is even closer. Now, I do live over a hill, but that sound comes over that hill right to my home, and my friends are amazed of how strong it is on my property. So I don't care to add another noise distraction with a similar business. Also, you know, air quality. You know, we all have allergies from the trees and everything, and the minute dust particles that get in the air from this kind of an operation is a concern. You know, you can see it on your cars, so it is there. One other factor is the conditional use permit on the composting part of this project. I don't have anything to address on the propane. Other people have taken care of that. The composting part, conditional use permit. I'm acquainted with conditional use permits, and they are only monitored under complaint-driven factors. Usually, the answer is we don't have the staff to look into that. And I think that's where most of the county departments are, understaffed. And, you know, they may go out and speak to the party involved, and nothing much happens, and nothing gets done. And I'm well acquainted with some problems of that they just do what they want, and nothing can be done about it, even though they have conditions on it. It's just eventually grandfathered in. And so that's about all my concerns are, but the noise is the biggest one.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Scheller.
Good evening. I'm Fran Bryant, one of the owners of the property across Curtis Creek and bordering the Granite Land Holdings, LLC, Justin Dambacker and Mike Holland project site. We have the 5-acre property on the corner of Tuolumne Highway and Wards Ferry Road. Across Wards Ferry Road from our property is the Sonora Union High School's agricultural study property. As indicated in our written response submitted on November 6, 2014, my 3 sisters and I are adamantly opposed to this project because of numerous concerns we all have with the adverse effects it will have on water sources, air quality, peace and quiet of the surrounding properties, and the inevitable infestation of rats, which are almost impossible to control and which will invade neighboring land. Our property has Curtis Creek in common with this project. We have 2 pristine wells which will undoubtedly be contaminated by runoff and seepage from the green waste composting facility. Whatever runoff there is from the green waste will also affect Curtis Creek. No one knows what pesticides, herbicides, or other contaminants will have been used on this green waste. And as the green waste is curing, there will be drift from the debris which will degrade air quality for unknown distances. We are not comfortable with a propane distribution facility right next door to the creek, our property and wells. The fact that propane in this quantity, a 30,000-gallon tank, plus numerous trucks coming and going filled with this product, will create a dangerous, hazardous area. 2 days ago in the Modesto Bee, an instance of sabotage with intent to murder was reported at a Stanislaus area propane storage facility. Fortunately, the perpetrator was apprehended before his plan was finalized. This could happen here. We are also concerned there will be ground and water contamination from this segment of the project as well. Our grandparents, Ruth and Roscoe Gray, both descendants of pioneer families who came to Tuolumne County in the 1850s, owned and lived on the Tuolumne Highway, Wards Ferry Road property until their deaths. Our current family consists of the 5th, 6th, and 7th generations in Tuolumne County. We used to stay with our grandparents and played on the hills and in the rocks and trees and along the creek in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s. It was and still is a beautiful place. It is one of the few acreages that now shelters deer, foxes, mallard ducks, and other wildlife. This project will be devastating to these animals. Their corridors are becoming more and more restricted with this type of development. If this was indeed evaluated
30 seconds, we wrap
through
up,
an
please.
environmental impact report and approved by said evaluation as being of little impact to the surrounding area, then I wonder who in their right mind did the evaluation. How much consideration did the EIR personnel have for the inevitabilities that we mentioned? Does no one respect their neighbors, or is anything sacred anymore? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Douglas DeSoto. I own the house at 18446 Wards Ferry, which is south of the project. About noise, I live on Waif Mine, and I can hear the mill from my house. So the distances you have to be within certain decibels just seemed odd to me. The project is upwind in general of my house, the house I own. My questions are about the retention pond. Who built it? What substrate is in it? How well does it hold water? How well does it hold other things? Is there how much capacity is there? Will it hold a 3 to 4 inch downpour, which we've been getting within a couple of days? And if not, what mitigation is there for that? What's going to happen to the chemicals that are in the water? And it's not, things don't just settle down. Sometimes there's things in the water. Is it going to be, say, monthly looked at for chemicals, pathogens? The 2 extra buildings, what are they going to be used for? Are you going to just approve generic buildings, see what happens later? What sort of oversight will there be if the buildings start getting used? The 30,000-gallon tank, according to your chart on page 4, is supposed to be 75 feet from a public way. And based on the map, it looks like the loop road that goes to everything will go right next to the tank, certainly not 75 feet from it. The grinder, what's going to run it? Is it a new one or an old one? Is it diesel, electric, gasoline? How noisy is it going to be? Some of the new machines are really quiet, and the old ones are definitely noisy. I had a grinder near my house when they were doing the bypass, and it was a noisy rascal, but they just did it while they were, I knew I couldn't talk that fast. The windrows, a portion's going to be donated, how much? Is it sold or given away? Which is it going to be? On page 5 of your report, it says that the stuff will be there either 48 hours or 7 days. It doesn't say which. 131 degrees is hot enough to start worrying about things being combusted, especially on a 110-degree day. It's also a south-facing slope, and this is really tough. 5 turnings per day. Is that going to include Sundays? Who's going to oversee that to make sure it's flipping over and not getting too hot? Where is the proposed well going to be? Who will oversee the noise, especially when it's a windy day? Who built that detention basin anyway? Times, one thing says 8 to 5, 9 to 5 would be
You want
much
to
nicer. Yes, sir.
wind her up? 3 minutes is up.
I'm pretty much.
You got anything else?
Yeah, the BLEVE, the concern about fire, it leaves out the propane that would come out of the
Vent.
the vent as a
Okay.
source of
We'll
combustion.
address that. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
And is there going to be a toilet there for the person who's working? Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks a lot, guys. I appreciate it.
You got it all covered, man.
And I must say, I also encourage us to keep our waste in the county. I think it's a great idea. I just don't think this one is necessarily it.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Susan Heimstra. I was raised in Tuolumne County by a wonderful man whose name was Warren Kagi, who was born and raised in Tuolumne County on a
Oh.
ranch in Jamestown on Campo Seco Road at the corner of Seco and Campo Seco Road. It was 180 acres, and we were probably a quarter of a mile at the most from the county dump. My husband Ralph and I own property that joins this particular entity, and we have a commercial property there. We have a well that is a very shallow well. The person who originally put in the well actually used to be the manager for the old fiberboard, or before that when it was whatever it was, Pickering, thank you. His last name was Garcia, and he lived in that home and had many of the workers live on his property. This particular project scares us in many different ways, and I've written and I've talked with Mike, and I haven't talked with Bev, I haven't talked with Duke, but everybody, you know, we've built and added to Tuolumne County for 40 years that we've been together, and some of the projects that come through and go through this particular board and our planning commissions are wonderful, and I've opposed and I've written oppositions and I've written approvals on many different things. In this particular area, I'm very concerned about this particular project for many of the same things that everybody else has been talking about, the water. The water on Campo Seco Road was definitely infiltrated from the burning of the dump twice a week. I have multiple sclerosis, and I've had it since I was 25, and I'm 58. I'm standing here with my knees shaking, trying to hold on. It's difficult. I have no feeling in my legs, and it's been a long time. Is this particular green waste, quote, project going to infiltrate the wells that are around this particular property? Marilyn Scheller and her husband have that beautiful Cascade Mobile Home Park for years, and that property is extremely close to this whole entity. I went out there just before we came down, and I took a picture with my iPad. They have already moved in household tanks. They have 2 trucks behind cyclone fencing. Is that going to be enough to keep out something like what we incurred with Durnall and Campora when there was an arson underneath their large mother tank? Is it going to keep out any kind of a problem for somebody who gets dismayed and wants to have a problem like what happened with Jim Albini, who was a wonderful teacher at Sonora High School, who just went over to Durnall and Campora and got his own tank filled and came home with it leaking, and it exploded and caught him on fire and his house and all of his property. I'm very opposed to this project. I wouldn't mind the grinder. We wouldn't be so opposed to that. However, there are problems with it. I own another piece of property on Hess Avenue that butts up to SPI property, and in June or May or June, there was a combustible fire there, and my 4 grandchildren were in the home when it came off. And I was at Dave Berger's office, Dr. Dave Berger. So,
Thank you very much.
not happy about it.
I gather that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else wish to speak in opposition? Okay, close that part of it. Anybody wish to speak neutrally? I think we do have one taker.
One taker.
Okay?
I don't know if it helps to talk about ancestors, but people seem to talk about ancestors a lot. My great-grandfather came, I'm John Sturdivant. My grandfather came in 1885 and was the minister at the Baptist Church, which is now the Aronis Hall, and so my roots go deep. Anyway.
Okay, back on the agenda topic,
Okay.
John.
I've got 3 minutes.
You
I'm not
got
gonna
3,
say very
okay.
much, so. I thought I'd throw that in for.
Sure.
I'm John Sturdivant, and I'm chair of the local Sierra Club. And basically, we do want to take a neutral position on this, but we do want to support the composting part of this project, since we do need to reduce solid waste. And if we can keep it in the county, that's better, and if we can use it for growing fruits and vegetables, that's better still. So that's what our position is. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Anybody else neutral? Don't see anybody else neutral. Now, we can have rebuttal and sir rebuttal. We had one individual speaking in favor, and he has the right to give a short rebuttal to what has been said. No new information. You're not the one that spoke, Mr. Holland.
Mr. Chairman, yeah, the applicant can also
Oh,
rebut,
okay, even though he
because
wasn't part of the-
essentially spoke in
Okay.
favor, yeah.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to try to speed through that list of complaints and try to address them as quick as I could.
Well, you got 3 minutes.
Okay.
max. Okay.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Fran was worried about the water was her first complaint. I want everybody to understand that the product that we're doing is basically the exact same conditions that you have on the forest floor. Upstream of us, we have millions of acres of natural forest, and it's all decomposing green waste. That's what the forest is made of. Every ounce of water we drink in this county has already rained down on the forest floor, filtered through it, come out crystal clear, come down a river, soaked into the ground, and is now in our wells. There's not a water problem here because all we're doing is replicating exactly what's happening on the floor of millions of acres of forest. Air quality, I want to reiterate that is being addressed. The Air Resources Board in California is compared to other states, is aggressive. I mean, the Air Resources Board is on this stuff, and they're not going to let us do anything stupid. So that's been addressed. The noise, that's also been addressed. One oddball was the rats. These compost piles and windrows are going to be turned quite a bit. When you're taking a wood chip and you're trying to break it down in 30 to 45 days, you're turning that pile often, probably once a day or maybe once every other day. There's not going to be an issue where rats are going to have some way to get in there and reproduce. I just wanted to make clear that. Again, the propane thing, everybody's freaked out about the propane thing. The fire department regulates that. They heavily regulate it. There's safety measures in effect, and all of that's been handled. It's been addressed. It's all of the safety features are there, and we're going to abide by all of them. The buildings, the reason the buildings are there, somebody mentioned the buildings. We put those buildings on the plan for future use. We don't have any intention of building them now. We're not planning on, doing anything crazy and building something. We're not trying to sneak one in. The fees were the same whether we had the buildings there or not. So we just wanted to go ahead and put the buildings on there so that if we needed a barn for our equipment or something, we could do it. Other complaints were leaching problem again into water. Again, this product is non-toxic. Grinding limits, the noise, Scheller was worried about the noise. The grinding is in the conditions is limited to very specific hours and days of the week. You're not going to hear this on Friday night at 10 o'clock. It's never going to happen. You may hear the mill, but in our conditions, if you read them, there's so many rules that we have to abide by that I really don't think over the noise of the highway, the grinder that's already there, and the mill, I don't think you're going to be able to pick us out. Anything else? Retention. Somebody said about the retention pond. The retention pond was, is that it?
You got 30 seconds.
Retention pond was built there during construction. It's good. It's in good shape. One of the conditions is that we have to have it planned out. It does function. We've seen it function. We'll have somebody on site to make sure that it still functions, and it has held up through all of these heavy rains. So the runoff is not really an issue.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask?
Yeah, a question for Mr. Dambager.
Yeah, I have one question now. I've heard from a couple of different people that there are home tanks already on.
We have another piece of property
on the
next door, and we're renting a yard space to the company that's eventually going to rent for their big tank. We signed a lease last year, and we couldn't honor it because this process took a lot longer than I thought. That was a rookie move on my part. But the tanks are empty. We're not breaking any rules. They're just leasing a yard space, a chain link yard space to park their trucks, and the tanks are empty.
Someone else is leasing from you this space?
Yeah, they're just renting it from us.
They're not your tanks?
No. And like I say, that's a temporary condition. We're trying to Band-Aid all of this together to try to make it work. It's taken, 6 or 8 months longer than we hoped.
All right, thank you. Mr. Holland, he has a right to rebut too if he cares to. If not, you don't have to. Okay. Now we go to Sir rebuttal. And anybody in the opponent's side that wishes to rebut anything that's been said? No new information, just rebutting what has been said. And I don't see any. Come to the. If you got something to say, come to the microphone.
I do have a question. He said those ponds were built, the retention ponds were built years ago, and they're fine and dandy. My question, are they lined, or is it just the water can go into them and then leach? I mean, nowadays, we have to line them with rubber and stuff like that to make sure there is no leaching, and we don't have to worry about that. But since these were grandfathered in, is it grandfathered into the whole system now? So that means those ponds are open, so it can leach into Curtis Creek and into my well? Just a question.
Okay, we'll answer that when we get back to the staff. Okay, anybody else wish to participate in Sir rebuttals, welcome to come forward.
Some of my colleagues know in the room I actually am a rocket scientist. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out, as I said, these two businesses are dynamic. There's going to be noise pollution. No disrespect personally to Mr. Dambacher. I understand, obviously he wants the business. It's not going to happen. It's not physically possible. The amplification of sound over water is about 30 to 40% greater. These businesses are right on top of Curtis Creek. I absolutely guarantee you we're going to have a noise issue. The other thing I want to go back to is you've got a traffic problem on Wards Ferry Road, or excuse me, Tuolumne Road. I don't know, this thing is going to be a disaster. I honestly believe that. Lastly, compost produces an organism called Aspergillus. We also call it Legionnaire's disease. It does induce rats. This is the truth. If you go on Google, you'll find out that the combustibility, if you wish, of these facilities are quite spectacular. And it's amazing to me how you have two businesses, one with propane, one that is potentially combustible. Go and Google, it's all happened all the time. We just had a plant like his blow up in Texas and killed 2 people only a few months ago. Highly regulated, it blew up. To me, to have 2 businesses that are potentially combustible next door to each other, frankly, to be honest with you, to use just common language, is an exercise in insanity. It's nuts. It's just ridiculous. That's all I have to say.
Okay,
I hope
you
you give this the greatest oversight, because there are potentially a tremendous amount of danger here. And again, Marilyn Scheller, who just spoke, has made this incredibly beautiful park. There's 120 houses.
Your time is over, and I appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. I'm finished.
Anybody else wish to participate in Sir rebuttal? Okay, with that, we'll close the public hearing. Now, we've had of course, the advantage of the agenda report that really covered, I think, everything we heard tonight. But for the benefit of everybody here, I did take some notes on some things that we really need some very brief responses to. And don't give me a dissertation, just give us the facts, okay? This is my list, and maybe your commissioner's got others. Okay, write this down. Comment on the noise, the use of chemicals, the dust potential, the smell potential, how it's going to be enforced, rules and so on, the water source, the rat issue, the ponds, I don't know, it's a big deal, but when they were built or whatever, but whether they're lined and what the function is of those ponds and where the runoff goes. That's my list. Commissioners, you got any other items that need to be addressed in a short period of time?
I believe fire hazard was in there, was one that I heard.
Okay. Okay, we can always add it. Okay.
Are you asking this from staff?
I'm asking this of staff to give us some one-liners here. Get through these. Two-liners, whatever. Okay, who's first? Mike?
Yeah, I guess I'm first. Okay, noise. The project is conditioned, as Bev said, to adhere to the general plan noise standards at the nearest property lines of qualifying parcels. Those are urban parcels, commercial or residential.
That's 50 decibels, which you say is lower than my voice.
That's right. Normal conversation in an enclosed room is
Okay.
approximately 65 decibels. The general plan requires 50 decibels on a 1 hour average at the property lines.
Okay.
Chemicals, there may be some chemicals on grass clippings or something that come into the facility, but that's about all that I'm aware of. What we've done is we've tried to require that the design of the facility is such that all the water gets funneled into the detention basin, so those types of things have a chance to settle out before the water is then released into Curtis Creek. Dust, this operation does require...
Question here?
Let me answer questions as we go along.
Sure,
I mean,
sure.
On the chemicals, there seems to be, in my mind, two concerns. One is in terms of chemicals that might be added in order to make the process work. My mic? Oh, there we go. One is that, it's probably the first time everybody complained about me being too quiet. And the other is the chemicals that come in with the product. Is the approval on this tied to the fact that they will not be bringing any additional additives to the process to make it work, or how is that controlled?
There's the process is highly regulated.
Mm-hmm.
They're permitted through the Water Board, through the local enforcement agency, who's our Environmental Health Division. They're permitted through the Air Pollution Control District. They have to adhere to fire protection regulations. There's a lot of regulation beyond what we're doing here. The composting operation is prohibited from accepting a whole lot of substances, in your conditions. The only additive that they've told me they want to use would be a small amount of manure, only if that's approved by the Air Pollution Control District and the local enforcement agency.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next on the list is dust. The composting process necessarily requires that everything be wetted at the beginning. And as it's turned, it has to be wetted some more if required. And during the summer, it would be required. During the winter, maybe not so much. There's not a lot of dust. I've been out to Mr. Dambacker's site. I've seen the operation he has going there. He tells me that it's going to be fairly similar operation, and that stuff was awfully damp. I don't see how it could burn or spontaneously combust. They are required to turn these piles. They are required to have environmental health out there inspecting them quarterly and reviewing their records on how often they turn the piles, those kinds of things. So that's that's the way we're addressing that. The smell. I have, like I said, been out to seen Mr. Dambacker's operation now. He dug several pits into his compost pile. There were several people there, but I stuck my head in every pit, and he's right. It smells like soil, new, fresh soil. 10 feet away, I couldn't smell a thing. That's because he's proposing and he's doing an aerobic composting process. When you do that, what they give off is a small amount of CO2. When you do an anaerobic process, it's the primary gas is given off as methane, which smells. So this operation is required to use an aerobic composting operation. They've agreed to that. Enforcement, basically, The Environmental Health Division will be out there quarterly, reviewing the terms of their permit. Other things such as noise would be enforced on an enforcement basis. We would be out there, in response to complaints, making sure they're consistent with the conditions of the permit. The water source, there's 3 potential water sources they could use. They're on property zoned industrial, so they're not required to use public water from the water line in the roadway. The Kincaid Ditch, which is basically Curtis Creek, is located on their south property boundary. They could contract with TUD to get water, untreated water from the Kincaid Ditch. They could also drill a well. I suspect they'll do one of the latter two because water is not cheap, and using the treated water would be expensive to them. Rats, basically turning the piles is going to keep the rats away. This method that they're using goes fast. They turn it quite frequently. They've got people on the site. The stuff does heat up. It's supposed to be, or it's required to be above 55 degrees centigrade for 15 days. That's how you kill the pathogens. So that's a requirement. They have to adhere to it. They have to take temperature measurements every day to prove that they're doing that.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr.
How long does the composting process take? I mean, from the time somebody brings it in and it starts the process until it's done?
I've heard it can take as short as 18 days. What I've been told is probably somewhere between 30 and 60 days.
So they're turning it each day during that process?
No,
Or
not every day.
Every other day, as the gentleman said?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
What the requirement is, there's a 15-day period where they have to turn it 5 times. They say they're going to do more often than that, but that's the requirement.
And that's to keep it aerobic?
Yes.
Okay.
Duke can address the ponds. The runoff I've already touched on. It's all going to go through the ponds or some other retention detention facility that they will construct. The fire hazard, the project has been reviewed by the Tuolumne County Fire Department. They've pointed us to the various regulations in the California Fire Code that would apply to an operation such as this. Those have been made conditions of the permit. Basically, they have to adhere to the setbacks and keeping buildings away and flammables away from the tanks. Then, as far as the composting goes, lost my train of thought. The composting is necessarily separated from the tanks. The turning process and the wetting of the compost prevent any spontaneous combustion like you see on the chip piles, basically at the mill or down in Chinese camp. So that's my one-line responses to your
Pretty good,
question.
yeah. For you, Mike, that's really good. He didn't hear that. Okay, commissioners, Commissioner Folker.
I just have one question on that noise factor by the grinder usage. The hours in which that, from what I've read in the report here, the hours that would be run in the beginning would be maybe twice a month or something like that?
Well, we agree the grinder is noisy. That's the noisiest part of the operation. The hours that they're allowed to run the grinder are 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., Monday through Friday. They've agreed that they will not run the grinder until they've accumulated 2,000 yards of waste to grind. So they're not every day. It takes them a while to accumulate that much. At the beginning, when they don't have a lot coming in, that's going to take a while. They estimate that they'd probably grind every month, and it would take 1 to 2 days. If the operation gets much more successful, they would be grinding probably more often, and they estimate, when it gets really going, if it ever does, 1 to 2 days a week.
Okay, so that would be the max that they would anticipate would be 1 or 2 days a week?
Correct.
And between the hours of
8 a.m. and 5 p.m., Monday through Friday.
And not on weekends?
Not
or
on weekends.
Not on any holidays?
Not on county holidays.
Thank you.
Okay. Other questions, commissioners?
There was comments on the pond that Duke was going to.
Yeah. You want to follow up on that?
The parcel map that created those industrial lots was recorded in 2005, And the mass grading that was done on those lots was when that pond was first installed. It was done as part of the State Regional Water Quality Control Board requirements to do on-site retention detention to prevent runoff of silt from the project site. It is an unlined pond. It was not required to be lined as part of that project. And I did do some checking. The industrial permits that they will be required to get from the State Regional Water Quality Control Board, we'll be looking at that. We also put in place conditions of approval that deal with reviewing the design of those ponds and looking at a maintenance plan for those ponds to make sure that they are cleaned out properly and properly maintained. I think that's most of the issues.
There was one other comment, I was looking at my list, one that we didn't bring up with your list is, I think, is traffic concerns. As to what do we see as far as the additional traffic that's for bringing stuff in and out, plus the propane trucks?
Well, currently, that particular intersection has a completely improved encroachment onto Tuolumne Road. And that particular segment of Tuolumne Road, we just recently did traffic counts there, and it's level of service B, which is well within the range allowed, but the intersection itself meets county standards for access. The turning templates are consistent. It was designed that way when they originally put in the industrial park.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, Mr. Ray.
It's also true that there's digging back to my time as Public Works Director, there's a light planned for the traffic signal planned for the intersection at Tuolumne Road and Standard, correct?
That is correct.
Is that somewhere in the offing? I mean, that would certainly help with the queuing to get out on the road.
This season.
So, I mean,
This
that will
construction
provide people opportunity to get out onto the road where they might not have it today.
That would provide potential gaps in the traffic and help with the ingress and egress to both this site and into Nugget Drive on the other side.
One additional question. On the lining of the detention pond, are you basically going to require them to prove to you that it won't leach into the soil? Is that the intent?
The requirements...
Because that seems to be the concern.
Yeah, I got you. Rich Mull from the Regional Water Quality Control Board is now overseeing industrial permits. There currently is no requirement that detention facility be lined. I think somewhere down the road, they're getting ready to reconsider that, but it's nothing in place at this time. It is not required to be lined currently.
I would encourage you to think about it.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just note too about traffic, that the propane facility is estimated to generate only 4 vehicle trips per day. The composting facility, as reviewed by our engineering staff, is anticipated to generate 22 vehicle trips per day. So we're not talking about a significant increase in traffic from this proposed project.
Okay, thank you. You have anything else, Mr. Rye, Mr. Baker? Did we get down your list?
Well, the only other thing, I guess, and I'm not sure how big of a much I want to, is there was a number of things about security. Is there anything that, in terms of the security of the site, that was another list of concerns on there? I suspect this is something where the law enforcement folks would have weighed in.
All I can tell you along those lines is the propane facility will be fenced.
Okay.
Only question I have again is back on the retention pond. One of the concerns I heard was that how will it handle a 3-4 inch a day rainfall?
Currently, that facility is quite large because it was originally designed to serve the entire industrial park. It is now currently proposed to be hooked up to this single site. We go by there and check it pretty regularly, and the pond does its job. It works quite well. It collects in there, it gets trapped, it has considerable capacity, and it worked quite well when the grading on that site was being done. So Now we're dealing with a single or two parcels out of the entire industrial park, so it's quite large.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Rye?
When we talk about 30,000 gallons for the propane tank, can somebody put that in some perspective for me? I mean, I realize the other propane companies around town have large tanks. Is that generally what we're talking about? I don't know how big 30,000 gallons is.
9 feet long.
I'm thinking of the one that they can see off 108 as you drive through Jamestown. It's one of the other companies. There's a large tank not too far off. I assume it's somewhere in that size.
Yes, that would be comparable, and we do have several propane facilities similar to this throughout the county. And yes, it's about 70 feet long, to give you perspective of this size.
Do we have any history of problems with those tanks?
Not that I'm aware of in our county.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Frazier.
Thank you. With regard to safety, did I read that this project will have overhead lighting?
No overhead lighting is proposed.
None.
What the conditions say is, prior to installing any overhead lighting, they have to submit a lighting plan to the county.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else?
I
Mr.
have kind
Baker.
of a question maybe for the proponent, if I could bring them back up for just a second.
Sure.
I'd like to understand the operation part of this thing. We talk about turning this over. Are we talking about a loader coming in, turning it upside down?
A small
Do you have
tractor
piece of
like a
equipment?
backhoe.
Tell me how you would go about that.
Okay, so right now we just use a 420 backhoe. It's a cat backhoe. It's not huge. It's got a 1 yard front bucket, a typical run of the mill backhoe. We're going to be doing a bigger operation, so we might have to use something slightly larger. But that piece of equipment does the job quite well. So the pile is probably around 12 feet tall and about 16 feet wide at the base, because it's got an angle of repose. So you pile it up there as high as you can. There's a limit to how tall you can stack it and still use the machine. There's also a limit on the fire control guys. The fire guys won't let us pile it too high. We don't want to pile it over that height anyway because the machine just can't get up there. So basically, we're just going to lift it up and dump it with the backhoe. There's a couple of different methods. One method is to crawl the pile. So you just simply stab into the pile, lift it up, and dump it over the other side. And then you stab it again and dump it over the other side. And you just essentially roll the pile, several feet, 10 or 15 feet in one direction. And then you do the next one. So you would just go through your windrows and move each pile up the hill. And then the next time you move them each pile down the hill. You would arrange the piles on contour so that if there was runoff, this stuff is very absorbent. And if there was any runoff, these piles would actually soak it up. It's like a giant sponge. So even in that event, there's this giant catchment pond, and the pond is enormous for what we're doing. The odds that our piles aren't going to catch that water and absorb it are slim to none. There's not going to be a huge runoff issue. Not from the piles themselves, maybe else on the property, but the piles aren't going to run off.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, go ahead.
On the heat will rise about 131 degrees?
Or more,
55
yeah,
Celsius?
yeah.
How much higher? I mean, the
So
spontaneous combustion can begin at 200, 220?
Yeah, and it's not going to happen.
It won't get close to...
You really, and if you guys came to the property and saw the piles, they're so damp. When you open them up, they're steamy. They're not like dry wood like you would think. After the first 7 or 10 days, that material's really breaking down a lot, and it's alive. There's a lot of biology in there doing its job to break that stuff down. So it's a steamy, hot jungle kind of environment. It's really, really hard. If you had a blowtorch in 15 minutes, I don't think you could start this thing on fire. It's probably not going to happen. You might get a situation where you could chimney it and try to get a chimney, through the pile to start a fire, but the odds of that, it's just not realistic. The fire thing is not really...
So chances of the spontaneous combustion would be nil?
I would say that, yeah. I can't, yeah, basically, a lightning strike or something could happen, but
Commissioner Rye?
There's people who have said tonight that they're aware that there have been some spontaneous combustion events at the mill.
Okay.
Is there a reason why that might happen there as opposed to what you're doing?
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand what the causes of that are and whether
they're not trying to compost.
Well,
They're just
I
piling
understand that.
material.
It's just a pile.
Well, the other thing is the size of their piles. And so the state.
You want to get to the microphone?
So part of the problem over at the mill is the size of their piles, just because they're so enormous. The state, the CDF or Tuolumne County Fire will allow a pile up to 250 feet long, 150 feet wide, and 25 feet tall. as you can see, we're nowhere near that. And so, but the mill has reached those type of levels, and they don't turn it, and so it just sits there and bakes
So
it.
down in the bottom of that, it's getting really hot, and that's what you're saying.
And they're just having
causes-
sawdust in there. We need it to be wet, we need it to rotate, and so, and we're just reaching a size that, I mean, if we could have a pile that big, it'd be amazing, but it's.
Okay, thank you,
if
thank
we
you for
do
that
entire year's
explanation.
amount.
That helps. Thank
Any
you.
other questions for the proponents while they're still here? If not, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could point out one other thing.
Yes, sir.
One of the conditions that's required by the California Fire Code is that before they begin any composting on the site, they have to submit a plan to the Tuolumne County Fire Department for review and approval demonstrating how they're not going to have spontaneous combustion.
Yeah. That's good. Okay, any questions, discussion? Or a motion, if anybody wants to pursue it? Anybody?
I mean, I'll start a discussion a little bit, but I guess
Sure.
I think to discuss for a few seconds here. I think our job here is to look at this thing and see whether or not it fits into the legal requirements that have been put in there. And personally, it feels to me like whether I would like to be next door to it or not is not the point. It is whether or not they're meeting the requirements to, that they have in front of them. And I think that from what I can tell, they have. And furthermore, the big hurdles are yet to come. You know, the big hurdles come with getting the approval from the regional, and I know from experience, those guys can tend to be pretty tough. The one thing that I did hear that made me feel a little bit more comfortable was the quarterly enforcement from environmental health. That there is some calendar-based, probably, we aren't just waiting for complaints. Because I agree with the people that have called to question how well working by complaint really works. Right? That, you know, people don't necessarily want to rock the boat or whatever, and so if it's completely complaint-driven, the enforcement portion is a concern. So it's comforting to me to some level that the environmental health place is going on. I'd like to see maybe, as much as it goes against my nature, maybe a little tighter in terms of the amount of enforcement that needs to go on that's structured in there, even though I'm almost choke at saying the words. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm done.
This is discussion, all right?
I agree with Commissioner Baker. I think they have met the letter of the law, and that there are more laws to come.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Rye?
I would agree with both on the question of whether this is consistent with the zoning and the general plan designations of this site. It appears that it is. I think I share Commissioner Baker's concern that I probably would be quite concerned, as the people in the audience are, if I was living next door to it. Because it's the unknown. I understand that. But I think they have met it, and from reading everything here and what I've heard tonight, it does appear that the issues have been addressed. I also share the concern or the perspective that getting through the Air Board and the Water Resources Board and such is probably a much bigger hurdle and a burden of proof on the applicant to be able to show them that they can do this and that they can guarantee, to what extent they can, that it'll function the way that they say it will. I think we have to take that as faith. That's not our role here tonight. Our role tonight is to say, did they follow the county's rules? And it appears to me that they did.
Okay, Mr. Fulker?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to address the audience. I understand your concerns, and I read each and every one of these forms that came in. And I know and understand your concerns. I also, which you were not available to, and the board was this whole document here of what they have complied with and what they yet have to comply with. I believe that they have, at this point, done everything that they should have done. And I do understand your concerns, and but I think that they have complied with everything that's necessary at this time.
Okay, I need a motion, one way or the other. Wind this baby up. Mr. Fulker?
I'll make a motion to recommend approval of site review permit SRP 14-002 under conditions of A through D, and also recommend approval of conditions of use permit, CUP 15-002, and under conditions A through, and we have 2 E's in there,
Oh,
so.
yes, you do.
Can we make that through F?
Yes.
Thank you.
That third, there's a third item.
The indemnity.
Oh, the indemnity, yes, and the, recommend also that the approval of the indemnity agreement by and between the County of Tuolumne, Granite Land Holdings LLC, and Justin Danbacker.
Second to that motion?
Mr. Chairman?
Question? for the
No,
ma-
no questions
Okay.
until we get a second.
I'll second it then.
Okay, a motion and a second. Now, questions and discussion.
I believe there were some changes to
Yeah.
conditions 19 and
yes.
57 that were not
Yes.
included with the motion.
We'll make that amendment of,
Just include that,
include 19 and
Yeah.
57.
okay.
With
We-
that,
we-
I-
We
I
have a
would-
motion and a second. Any further discussion by the commission?
One small bit of discussion.
Yes, sir.
I would like to understand a little bit about the breadth of the indemnity. When they indemnify, how does that work? If you could explain that a little bit.
The way the indemnification works, and we require these on most of our projects these days. In fact, it's the first condition you see on every entitlement that this commission has ever approved. What that is that in the event that there is a lawsuit concerning the county's action to approve this project, or in the event that we denied it, and the applicants would have to identify it anyway. If the county approved the project, there was a lawsuit, a challenge, that this says that the applicant is fully responsible for paying all costs incurred by the county to defend the action.
How is that different than the standard boilerplate condition number 1 that I've been looking at for the last umpteen years here?
It's, the agreement has been recommended by council to provide a more formalized document between the property owner and the county. But it essentially says the same thing, yes.
But a little bit more formalized.
It's more formalized, yes.
Okay, any further discussion on the motion? If not, I'll call the question. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstained? Passed unanimously. And with that, I think that concludes our business.
Yes,
And
it
we
does.
will close the meeting.